Hello. Okay, I got my audio going. Hey everyone, how are you doing today? Um, yeah, today's gonna be an interesting live stream. Partly because things have just been so crazy for us that we totally didn't plan for this live stream at all. So in the past 5 minutes, as we're prepping for things, Alex is just frantically typing on his keyboard, trying to figure out what we're gonna be talking about.
Yep.
We're the most organized company in the world. The thing is, like, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, like, I love doing the live streams, but the prep and work that has to go into them is always a challenge. But I love, like, being able to connect with the community and talk to them. But, like, the Friday ones, when I have to put together the slide deck, it's just so much work.
Fair. That's fair.
It's the price to pay, right?
I enjoy them too, for sure.
Yeah. And I think out of all the shows we've done, this is the most consistent. Like, we're on episode 34. We're almost a full week in. I mean, full year in. So it's like, thank you, Brad. It's good to know that our community appreciates them. Brad says we appreciate them too. Actually, there's been so many times where I've actually thought about not doing the Friday presentations at all. And then that very day, I get a message from someone, either as a comment to the video or as a private message, and they're like, "That was a great talk. I really loved it. It encourages me to be a game designer, and so on and so forth." And I was like, "All right, fine." But in the long run, I'm happy to have them because I'm thinking, like, in 10 years from now, I want to actually release a book that's my lessons learned in game design.
That makes sense.
TCG design. That's what I want to do. So that's one of my life goals, to publish a book.
Fair enough.
All right. So what are we talking about today? This was your idea. You pitch it. You talk about it.
Well, you mean we pretty much didn't have any idea, so I spatball something, and it was the first thing I offered. And you're like, "That's the one we're doing."
Wait, you had other options?
I'm saving those for next week when it's an hour before the stream.
Oh goodness.
Today we're just going to do some card design together. To be fair, me and you don't actually usually do card design together. It's either you have a design and then we bring it to each other, and then there's tweaking. Like, we do tweak.
Yes. Okay.
But we never start at the beginning together.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
All right. I give that to you. Like, that's true. And so the point in the project where you jumped in was also a very weird spot. It was at the moment where we're upheavaling all of Origins and deciding, okay, we're pivoting completely. Let's throw everything out and just redesign from scratch. So we had a bunch of things ready, and all those things that are already done, those are the things with my tags on them. All the new stuff, I didn't do any of it. So I was like, "Alex, here's this half-baked pie. Finish it."
Yeah, it was terrifying.
And then before starting that, let's go finish second edition and then come back to this. It was
at the time, though, second edition felt like a piece, because I started this, and then we're like, "Oh, let's go do second edition." Second edition felt easy. It felt easy. Now we're actually dealing with second edition. Now it feels hard, and now
my goodness,
Origins kind of feels easy, but it's all over the place.
Just wait until we start getting into the production stuff for Origins. It's gonna be a beast. Hey Steve, we haven't heard. Is the audio good? Can you even hear?
How's the audio, guys?
Yeah. No one said anything. I'm just assuming it's good. Not too loud.
They're just waiting for for it to start. They're just waiting.
Yeah, right. All right. So we are. Audio is good. Thank you, Havoc TV. Thank you for joining. It's been a long time since I've heard from you. I'm hoping that in the next little while we're gonna be seeing some cool content come out your way. And I'm really hoping that in the next little while we start seeing gameplay starts off. All right, audio is great. I'm hearing Alex audio is quiet.
I'll yell louder.
Let me put that up a little bit. Just busy here for the last few minutes. All right, no worries, Steve. I mean, we rely on you to make sure everything works, but fine. You go have a life of your own. Hey, Darren, thanks for joining. Okay, so we're doing game design. I have 2 booster packs from 2nd edition that I thought I would open. So let's. I don't know. You want to do the game design stuff and keep them waiting?
Sure. We'll just randomly insert it when they're getting bored.
yeah, exactly. All right. So let's start with the most difficult question, but the most important question. How do you start when you want to design a new card?
So I'll talk about what I've got here planned, and I'll talk about what I've done in the past. Usually I start with a concept or goal. For example, I'll start with my early topic, which is anti-card draw. The current meta, as far as we know, is like the most fear is really Epiphany, and it's Nubia. But they're in a weird spot where you can't really affect both with much. So that was the thing I was going to start with. And then I think of a basic concept. So I decided, let's talk about, we actually tried this before in Future League. We've tried anti-draw before on a trap card that said when you were on it, you couldn't draw cards. And it broke the game because Sid then would just go and play unhinged and make the opponent discard their entire hand. And it was just today because I was just thinking about this topic and I went, wait, all we needed to write was abilities you play / trigger do not allow you to draw cards.
I have the caveat here. I have a caveat. Okay, this is where game design starts getting interesting. Is when someone says something and you're like, wait a moment, So alterations are independent from the champions. They don't know who you is.
Yes. So that's only for alterations.
Yeah.
So that goes to my next thing. How do I design cards? I take that tag.
Yeah.
And I take that tag and I design it to 5 different cards. One for every single type of card.
Okay.
So
take a step back. What do you mean by tag?
So my goal was anti-card draw. So the tag that I wrote was abilities, enemy. So I think I wrote enemies here, but I think that's wrong. Abilities, enemies play / trigger do not allow them to draw cards.
Okay.
That is my goal. That is the outcome that I am hoping for. Now, how do I apply this into each of the different types of cards? Let's go with the spell. I think if this is a spell, what do I want with this? This spell just feels like it's literally just doing that. It's just going to be a swift spell that says abilities enemies play or trigger do not allow them to draw cards this round. That's pretty simple.
So immediate isn't a trigger. Would you want to just make that all-encompassing?
Yeah, I probably would want to make that all-encompassing because I think in this goal it's to also fight back the Nubia. The other part that's missing here is so as long as it's abilities, it's fine. So if it just says abilities,
so abilities,
how do you do that?
Abilities your enemies play cannot draw them cards.
But you don't play triggers or
okay.
So that's the pullback there.
All abilities from your opponents cannot draw them cards.
That would work. I'm gonna write that down. All abilities
from your
opponents cannot draw them cards. Right. I think that's a good baseline. It's a spell. I don't really see a spell needing to do damage and need this effect. That just doesn't really make sense. And then I switch to a technique. And now I get to the opposite. I'm like, if you're physically doing this to somebody, I think you have their spellcaster in front of you, they're trying to cast a spell, you're punching them in the face or slapping their arms away so they're not casting their spell. Okay. So it's 1 damage with a trigger if you did damage to them. All abilities from your opponents cannot draw them cards. I'm just trying to fix it for the new wording we made. For that one, then I put a caveat because I was like, what is better? Is it better to be next round your opponent cannot draw cards, or until the end of rounds your opponent cannot draw cards?
Okay.
Because now you get that awkward space because if you say this round, A, you're not affecting Nubia. Nubia is already drawn at that point.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a few places where you'd stop the draw.
Brad threw up a thing in chat. All of your enemies' abilities cannot allow them to draw cards.
There you go.
That's very similar. It's very, very similar, yeah. But it's cleaner. I don't know about the punctuation exactly is the way I want it to be, but that's fine. That's a whole punctuation is a whole other beast that I do not want to drag our audience through. It's oh my edit. Well, I say my editor Brad hates like a lot of people have hated me because of my weird punctuation styles for Genesis.
That's fair.
But computer scientist first, linguist second, English minor third. So, all right, someone, Cody Clates.
That is an old friend of mine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Howdy, Cody. So yeah, that was more the concept.
Actually, I want to touch on that. Something that was really weird for me. Just a side tangent story. My brother reaches out to me the other day, and he's like, "It's weird to think that you're a YouTube influencer." I'm like, "Am I?" He's like, "You make videos. You're on YouTube. You're putting content out regularly, and you're an influencer." I'm like, "All right, sure." But yeah, it's definitely a weird feeling when all of a sudden you realize how much we've done. Anyways. All right, back to your design. So
yeah, I agree. The round thing, though, that's not really important for me to decide right now. I think more in the testing phase, I figure out what's better, whether it's the round or the end of the round. But let's just move on. Summons are almost usually the easiest because generally when I'm designing them around a concept, I usually slap them onto a 3/3 body. I find that that's the neutralist balance, and it's just a 3/3 that has a continuous that says all of your enemies' abilities cannot allow them to draw cards. Which is more of a question one now for you.
All abilities, everything around them, adjacent.
This is just all. It's just that this one is unbounded. This one is specifically unbounded because I'm not necessarily going for balance here. This is the concept phase, and sometimes you need that because if we're looking at the Epiphany decks on turn 1, how do you stop? How do you get around? I'll tell you how you do around it. We go to our alteration version here. Everything on and around cannot draw cards. That's how I got on the alteration version.
All right.
And then the last one, which was just enchantment, but I didn't go into full details here because I probably would do this on a curse effect, but I'd have to explain what curses are, and we're not there right now.
All right. So the red flags that always go off, and this is where the balance of designing, what you wanted to do, what other TCGs can do, and what Genesis is at heart is here you have a great card, and it's necessary for it to be unbounded for it to get the full effect that you're looking for. But then Genesis, and from my perspective, is I'm always wanting to hold things back and be like, okay, does it need to be unbounded? Can it be restricted down? Because the more the game pushes towards an unboundedness, the more comfortable we as designers are creating cards that are unbounded, the more the entire ecosystem of the game starts falling apart. So the way I would look at that is first with the spell. I would be wondering if there's a way we can have the best of both worlds, where either it's unbounded and it hits you as well, like Meteor.
Yeah, I would do that.
Or line of sight. Now, line of sight
is a new thing.
It is a new thing, but at the same time, it's in the 4.0 rulebook, so I don't feel too bad talking about it.
Yeah, I actually do think line of sight is a nice, decent fix for some of those things where you want to unbound them, but now you actually do have some bounding and some playing to it.
Yeah.
Much better.
The other side to line of sight that I like there is now the more line of sight is in the game, the more the movement phase is absolutely critical, even on round 1. Like, the game starts, and before you play anything, you actually have to consider, do I want to stay where I am? And if you make that mistake of not moving, then all of a sudden you're gonna get hurt from that. So forcing that move, forcing your player to go right or left, sure, they can move to the right and avoid you from hitting it with line of sight, but then you have an opportunity to start cornering them in. They've chosen a side, they start getting cornered in. That matters. That definitely matters. So this is where I'd look at when it comes to those. But I think overall, concept-wise, you're hitting the right tones. And the one thing I love about, especially your design, is you start up high, not to a point where the card's broken, but you start at a high point and start chiseling down to a comfortable level.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of designers start at the bottom and try to build the card up. And the challenge with that is when you start chiseling down and your test group starts complaining that the card's not playable anymore, now you know when you've hit that level. But when you start building it up, players are like, okay, give me a little bit more, give me a little bit more, give me a little bit more. And before you know it, it's broken. But it's like boiling frogs, that whole philosophy. You put them in regular water and slowly put the temperature up, and they won't even notice, right?
Sure.
And then all of a sudden you get someone tests the card from an outside perspective and it's like, what did you just make? Like, really, what was going through your mind? Like, but this seemed fine during testing. There's those issues. So, now the trap. It's unbounded. You toss it underneath the person. It says on or around. Why is it on or around? Can you justify?
Probably adjacent. I wrote these 5 minutes ago before we started the stream. Quick designing.
But why not just on?
So it could be on. It depends on what the intention of the alteration was, because I didn't actually specify that this was a trap. So when I wasn't actually designing it, I didn't necessarily say it was a trap. So it would have been necessary you've been placing it beside them.
Okay.
That's actually just the reason I think why. But yeah, a trap would have worked the exact same way, without the around thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you're gonna go the trap route, the thing I like about the trap is I think the flavor is a little bit more interesting than an alteration. Like, what are you creating? What are you like? So my perspective on alterations has changed a lot in the past 6 months. And one of the things when I look at the create alterations is that they should be terrain pieces. They should be like you're creating a boulder, you're creating a tree, you're creating shrubbery. But you're creating these things as distractions, as vantage points, as all these other things. So what are you creating near someone that's causing them the inability to gain more knowledge?
A Rubik's Cube. Obviously, they're going to spend their time. They got to figure the Rubik's Cube before they can think.
I'm just imagining this in real life. Someone's sitting there and they're in the middle of Epiphany and you show up out of nowhere and you're like, Rubik's Cube? They're like, Rubik's Cube.
No, you just go, but you can't solve this. And they're like, yes, I can. And I'm like, ah.
Oh, man. Another side story. When I was younger and I was hanging around with my cousin and I was really, really bored one day, but he didn't want to do anything. And I was like, I bet you can't beat me in pinball. And, remember on Windows, you had the pinball game?
Yeah.
And then we just did that for hours.
Pinball game was great.
Yeah. So, yeah, sometimes that works. And then, so those are the things that kind of go through my mind. I like it as a trap. I think the flavor can be a little bit stronger there. And that's the other side to it, is when you talk about the design, I really like that you have this mechanical approach. You're talking completely bottom up. But what I would like to know is, okay, so I have this technique, and it's going to deal 1 damage, and it's going to solve this problem. Here's the flavor I would add on top of it, right? Like, here is some ideas. But one thing that's really cool here is that you're now experimenting with all the different card types. You're trying to show, and it's a good, just thought experiment of, how do you become a better game designer? Well, you practice designing cards for every card type. So you take something simple like, I'm trying to think of a random card, but all the cards around me are just champion cards. Regician Lion, you have the leader mechanic. So I pulled from Regician Lion right here. You have the leader mechanic. Okay, how would I throw that onto spell, technique, alteration, enchantment? And I think that's a good way of practicing that skill set.
And we need the leader mechanic back.
Yeah, we do. It's a named mechanic. We should really reuse it. I think there's definitely a good space for that. All right, cool. So of those, which is the one that's most interesting to you?
So I know the one that interests me the most. It's probably not your favorite. And it might just be because of the way that I like to do things. It's on a body. Because now it's something your opponent has to deal with or play around if they want to start doing these types of effects. So if you were the Rain OTK, coincidentally it's a 3/3, you could still now teleport over, kill this summon, then try to go off with your combo. But now you've already wasted some resources to deal with this thing.
Okay.
It's interesting. I just like summons. Maybe that's my problem.
So the other part I'll look at it is, okay, you're really trying to hurt casters with this, right? Casters are the ones,
so if we look at, we need to look at draw in specific. So yeah, I think casters are probably the most affected by this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would look at, okay, there's two approaches. The summoner approach, which is summoners are being harmed a lot from casters.
Yeah.
So would we want to give them the tools they need to fight back? Or do you want to double down on the rock, paper, scissors and give it to the fighter?
Sure.
And say, okay, fighters, make sure that you never lose to a caster. Here's another tool at your disposal. And for me, I think I would lean towards technique purely because I don't think technique has those card types haven't seen the same love that other card types have seen in the past.
Yeah, that's fair. Will says a flashbang trap.
It's a trap. Yeah.
And so, Steve says shrubberies are an HG.
You must bring me a shrubbery. Such a good movie. So yeah, there's so many different approaches. I think it really comes down to what is the solution that you're trying to get to the game, right?
For sure.
So that's bottom up. Did you want to go with your next one? Do you want me to go?
No, we'll jump over to one of yours.
All right. So more recently, because I've been able to take a step back from the game design process, I don't have to think about the mechanics so much. I just get to design things when I want to design them and when I think something really awesome comes my way. So I was actually thinking back. A lot of people who have been watching this for a long time, and Alex knows this. I love Supernatural. It's one of the shows that I've re-seen so many times, and there's a lot of great monsters in there. So one episode that comes to my mind is when they encounter a ghoul, and ghouls are these monsters that eat the living or eat the dead, and then through the process of eating them, gain all their memories and then transform into that creature. And I was thinking, okay, how would I reapproach redesigning Yamaraja? And I took these two ideas that kind of came together, and I was like, what would be a really cool thing was if this creature hit the arena, so using Resurrect, hits the arena where something has been killed, then searches everyone's memories for a summon that has been killed on that spot, removes that summon from the game, so it consumes the memory, the essence, the remaining entity that was there, and then it becomes that creature. So it gains that creature's all of the creature's abilities and its awareness. I was thinking about this. Now it does come with this downside of this becomes a resurrect creature, it becomes like a resurrect deck. But the other side that we can curve with it is that it wouldn't steal that creature's health. So if this thing has a low enough health, it can always remain the balanced form of that other creature. So imagine it does this to an angel. Well, it'll gain the angel's 6 attack, it'll gain flight and aerial. But if it is only 3 health itself, well then it's just a slightly better desk companion.
Yeah.
So my approach it would be, okay, definitely coming from the flavor down, looking at the mechanics, but then also trying to figure out how to play within the scope of the mechanics we already have in the game. So yeah, that's the idea that I would pitch. What do you see as like major issues with something like that?
See, I don't see it as a major issue. I do see it as a fixing a Yamaraja. Ironically, I played with Yamaraja just the other day, but yeah, it comes back to the awkwardness of Yamaraja. This essentially fixes the awkwardness of Yamaraja. For Yamaraja to play it, you need to kill a summon. Once you've killed a summon, the Yamaraja can now come back board. But if there's no summon there for it to now kill, it then can't gain any knowledge.
Yeah.
It's like, what do? I killed the summon so I can play the Yamaraja. Now I can play Yamaraja, but it's a 0/6.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. And it doesn't even have an attack ability that you could boost. It has nothing.
Yeah.
It has nothing.
It has nothing.
And then you have to go kill something else nearby. It has to stand beside something. It's like, yo, what's up? And then wait for that thing to die. It's like, so you got to die soon? Yeah. All right, let's do this.
Oh.
So yeah, there's definitely issues with Yamaraja. I love that it has 6 health, but I think if you could, so my biggest thing out of the 3 mechanics that came out of Raise, Resurrect, Pacify, and Desperation, Resurrect I think is at its absolute infancy. There's so much that you can do with that mechanic.
Yeah,
I don't think we've tapped into, and cards like Call to the Bones creates that opening for the game to explore
Yes.
Resurrect.
Yeah.
So I
gives you the fodder you need to die.
Yeah, I would love to see more Resurrect. Now, the problem with Resurrect, and this is something you and I have discussed quite a bit, is that it's so summons focused. You need summons to die. It's a summon itself. Like, it starts turning the game more into normal TCGs, which are just purely focused around the summoner type, the summoner class. How would you suggest looking at Resurrect on other card types? Is there a way to look at Resurrect on other card types?
I wish you had planned this topic earlier. I could have brought up my whole list.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you were leading that, if you knew I have a list. Because I said, as I make a card for every single card type, I've done that for Resurrect Beckon. So funny enough, it's not that much difference. If you were to put it on a spell or technique, you essentially have a juiced up spell or technique that requires a summon to die this turn. I think you've seen one of those and you're like, you actually told me to push it better, just have a normal version and have almost like a death version. See, the issue there is the flavor. You're not resurrecting anything. It's more of a based off of a death. Because it's a require of a death. Yeah. And then I did some support cards. Is like I looked at, because we did work on there was some Resurrect support cards in Raise, right? Yeah. But they really didn't actually support what was needed for like a Resurrect Beckon. So I think like the number one thing that I think is most important as a support card for a Resurrect Beckon is a 3-chi that says, choose a spot in the arena, treat that spot like a summon died there this turn.
Okay.
And that fixes the Resurrect Beckon. Now you've essentially you have the spot that counts as a corpse. That's how I say a support sort of card. Techniques are the same thing. It's just the same thing. It's an effect. It's stronger if something died. I'm trying to think of alterations. I think I made an alteration that just essentially counted. It was called like corpse pile or something, and it counted like a dead thing on the board as long as it was there. Enchantments. I don't remember my enchantment I designed off of that. Off the top of my head, I can't remember it. Yeah.
So now for the spell technique, is it truly Resurrect or is it more just Death Tribute?
And that's the question, right? It's not Resurrect, because Resurrect physically implies summon. It's literally implying resurrecting something, resurrecting a summon.
Yeah.
If I don't think you can have a Resurrect specifically trigger. And I wrote Resurrect on them, and then afterwards I'm like, flavorful, this doesn't work. No. It just doesn't work. It can be the same mechanic. It could require something to have died, but it's not a Resurrect no matter what. No.
So now, if we look at what the Resurrect tag does to the Beckon ability, it creates the prefix of saying this card can only be Beckoned if something else has been killed. And then it says now, instead of beckoning it on a spot adjacent to you, you beckon it where something has been killed. So what you could do is, and now what I'm thinking is along the lines of StarCraft Zerg buildings where they were living entities, and you can now have alterations with a Resurrect create. It can only be created, you can only use the create ability if something has been killed, and it can only be created onto a spot where something has been killed. And then it creates some sort of like living organism. So I think that you can get the flavor mixing together. But when
it's because it's a physical thing once again. It's literally about the physical nature of it.
You're definitely looking, but I think once you start going into spells and techniques, you're looking more in tributes. You have the idea of you can have either revenge, where the idea is if an ally has been killed, this card now becomes boosted because now you're revenging the fallen allies, or you just have something like Death Tribute or Bloodlust or something like that, saying if something has died, you are excited from that death, and now you are doing a little bit extra. The flavor of things are always so interesting. But the one thing I really love about Magic, I was about to say, I do love Magic for this, but Genesis is that there are moments where you can combine the flavor and what happens in gameplay so perfectly. You don't get that from a lot of games out there until you start getting into the video game space, but they have a whole other dimension that we don't get to use, let alone sound. So, yeah.
James the Banker says, calls the bones. Love that card.
It loves you too. I had a conversation with it the other day. It's like, that guy James? I was like, yeah. I like, love him. Love him. Love him. See, there was 3 skeletons each. Yeah. I'm such a dork.
I was not prepared for that. I thought you were going to say, we love it too. You took it to the right level.
Or the better would have been, we love it. We love him 3. Field of Dead creates an area of dead
area.
Okay. So Field of the Dead creates an area of dead area. Oh, so kind of like again, going back to StarCraft, the Zerg could only create buildings on top of their goo thingy. So this would allow you to create a space that's now permanently considered something has died here.
Yeah.
And then to tie that into the resurrecting, that could have really cool flavors. Taste the rainbow. All right. Yeah, there's my morbid flavor thing. Let's go back to one of yours.
I'll let you choose because I have 3 here, I think, to talk about. Just sort of abilities I want to, look at in the future. Anti-cast effects to support discard effects, and life gain. Which one are you feeling?
So, just because it's a conversation we've had more recently, and it's definitely been on my mind a lot, the anti-cast. And I want to preface this by talking a little bit about why this has been on my mind a lot. A lot of the challenges with the game right now is because the game purely focuses around combat in the attack mechanic. So damage prevention, prevent damage from the next attack ability, or spectral, aerial, and even what's his name, Lightless. So many of these specify attack abilities. And because of that, cast abilities are feeling overpowering. They can do a lot more. You compare Bolt Shot to Tsunami. Tsunami's really good. Bolt Shot's way more played. But at the same time, no matter how much better Bolt Shot is, you'll always be able to say things like, Lightless only takes 3 damage from it. Like you have to use Bolt Shot to kill the Malevolent Spirit, so you have to waste your Bolt Shots and all these things. But Tsunami doesn't get that same kind of hate. It's there isn't as much that are talking about cast abilities except for Shutdown.
Yeah, Shutdown's the only one.
Yeah. So I was looking a lot about how to rebalance the scales between attack abilities and cast abilities, and bringing casters down a peg. So let's take it away. Tell me what you came up with.
Well, I didn't get deep in this one. I didn't get that far. Pretty much just finished the previous one. So we'll start with the basic one. Cast resistance. Literally, you balance it off. You have your attack resistance. You got your cast resistance.
Yeah. So the next part about that is it will cover a whole new group of cards that are coming out. So one thing we're looking at in future is summons having cast abilities on them. So having a summon that says, cast resistance 1. It's a subset of Lightless, because Lightless is damage resistance, right? So you can have something that's attack resistant, you can have something cast resistant. Yeah, that's one of those things I would love to see and love to see it scale. Now, would you throw that into a spell directly, or would you make it a one-off until end of round, or do you want to see that as an enchantment?
So that's the simple part about this one. You can, because it's just resistance.
Yeah.
You can literally apply this to anything. Literally all 5. It could be a technique that just gives yourself cast resistance. Let's just say a spell that gives a summon cast resistance, a summon that has cast resistance, an alteration that gives everything cast resistant that's on it. You have all those different routes to take.
Okay.
Right? Same with enchantment. You could have just enchantment that grants cast resistance if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of an ability that we know exactly how it works. It's not going to change. The only way it would change is specifically with that enchantment one. You could probably stack a bunch on yourself depending on how we design the card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, let me throw this out there. Aerial, right now, Aerial is seen as a very, very powerful mechanic. So powerful that we can relatively comfortably say we shouldn't have created it to begin with. Do you think the reverse is actually as powerful if you had a card that said, this summon cannot be targeted by spells, by cast abilities?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I don't. So I'm trying to picture it. And it's specifically targeting. We're saying specifically targeting. I don't think so, because I'm starting to think. So it's like you look at what are the powerful cast abilities played. So you go, okay, Meteorite, it would still be hit by Meteorite. Tsunami, okay, it gets hit by Tsunami. The only one I can think of is the 6 damage from Subjugation Strike is one thing it'd be immune to. It'd be immune to some caster attacks, but the old champions, the spellcasters, don't have cast as their basic attack ability. Yeah.
Idris's Fireball should have been a cast, hands down. And Kendra's built-in attack, I would have made a cast ability. If I could redo them, I would have done them that way.
That's an interesting perception, yeah.
So
no, I think it'd be terrible. It probably would be terrible. Now, that strong.
Now, what is the equivalent of Aerial, but against cast abilities?
Ooh. So the funny thing is, if we look at those sort of abilities, it's where you don't take damage from not specifically cast abilities, but it seems to be more of AoEs. But I think that's maybe too encompassing.
I would put it as give a summon who has the ability that says something along the lines of this prevent all damage dealt to card name from cast abilities that do not target it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There we go.
So specifically cast abilities, it's preventing, but at the same time now tsunamis, meteorites, all those things kind of wash away. It's just the only way to hit it is by actually targeting it with a cast or just beating it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you give it to us. Now that would have been a great ability as a tertiary onto Primordial Force. It just walks around bashing everyone. Oh, I miss Primordial Force.
Oh.
All right, so that's equivalent to Aerial. Yeah. What else would you see as the anti-cast stuff that's needed to kind of like hold back some of those really powerful cast cards from just
anti-cast cards? I'm trying to think. It's like not that many people play it, but we have Reconfigure Reality, which only does techniques, right?
I think it's just negate target attack ability.
So we don't have a cast version of it.
The closest you got is Shutdown.
Yeah, but so if you can almost match them. You have Reconfigure Reality and you have Pressure Point. No, Pressure Point does techniques, so that does attack abilities. Yeah, so the closest you have is Shutdown. But more so essentially a longer range, because usually when we're talking about the powerful cast abilities, they're not right in front of you.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the most powerful cards or the ones that are most threatening are usually played from the far front awareness. So when you want to have these like nice little shutdown type of effects, that distance is really what makes those cards a lot more valuable.
For sure.
All right.
Aaron says his Idris casts fireball.
Cool.
All right, you want to give me one of your concepts?
So another thing I do, I spend a lot of time. I have a lot of weird videos show up on my YouTube feed because I'm interested in so many different videos. Like in a single sitting, I'm watching like how they're making pencils into deep mythologies of the North, and then into how does this part of your body work. So I love all these like really really random things. So something that's been on my mind more recently is what more could we do with octopuses. I love them. They're amazing. There's so much about them that are really, really cool. Their ability to camouflage, their ability to use tools. They're like, I was thinking a lot about how could you break that down into like different summons. What are different summons we could make? But also, how would you approach making champions? Like a race of sentient octopi. Because the first ones that come to my mind are the one guy from Doctor Who. And I'm like, no.
The Ood?
Yeah, the Oods. And then you also got there's a one that was half Dalek and half Doctor. And that thing also reminds me of an octopus.
Half Doctor. I remember that one. Half Doctor.
Yeah. It was when the Tribunal of Daleks wanted to create a more powerful Dalek, so it was like.
Oh yes, okay, now I remember him. Yeah.
And then so there's that. And then there's also from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Davy Jones.
Yeah. So
yep.
That's one end of it where it's more half human, half octopus. But I was like, how would you explore a race that's more than that? Like, is there another approach to it that I think would be a lot more interesting?
What about, so you have like Ursula.
That's true.
Or Little Mermaid.
Yeah, but I'm almost. So one thing that comes to my mind, and this is always the quote that comes to my mind whenever I'm creating new races, new creatures, things like that, is from Battlestar Galactica. And when one of the Cylons is revealing like kind of the master plan and all the why, and he starts questioning like, why were we designed to look like humans? We have all this technology. We're so much more powerful than they. Why are we limiting ourselves to only see in their spectrum of light? Why are we limiting ourselves to only having 2 arms? Why are we limiting ourselves to look like an inferior race? And if I were to think about octopus, I'd be like, okay, you have the quadrupedal animals like horses, dogs. They get a lot of speed from having 4 legs. Well, then octopus have 8, so could we turn 4 of them into legs, 4 of them into arms, and then do something more along that? So the reason why I went down this is because I think in that approach you have a lot of opportunities to explore kind of the different aquatic life, and I think we could create a really cool world out of that. Now going back to game design, so for people who are out there and they see this really cool concept, so octopus, like I was saying, there's so many things you could do. They use tools, they can camouflage, they can move really fast, they can they're crazy, they're just absolutely insane. So I remember sitting down with Lionel when he was designing Yamaraja and was talking about Frankenstein. I was trying to break down all the pieces. I was like, no, just focus on one thing really, really well, and nail that, make that work, right? So when I think of the octopus, I would propose, how would you approach doing camouflage in the game? Because I think that could be a really cool mechanic.
So I think I recently proposed an effect for camouflage when we were looking at Phage 8 cheese.
Okay.
And I think, and it may not have been, I'm not saying this is the best for camouflage, this was just and it may have been, I made the ability and then named it camouflage just to make it along the way. Because I think my ability was when the creature entered the battlefield, it gained camouflage, which meant it couldn't be damaged by anything that round. Which I know doesn't necessarily make sense because AoE should still hit it. But it was more about as a camouflage creature, you shouldn't know that the creature is there, so you shouldn't be really AoEing that spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the hard part when designing. It's like the realism versus the non-realism. So it's like, oh, there's a creature that necessarily camouflaged. Let's just say it was camouflaged until it didn't attack or something, so it couldn't be dealt damage. And then an opponent, but if it was camouflaged and you could hit it still with AoEs, an opponent would just be like, I'm casting tsunamis to the side for no reason. I know your enemy's there, camouflaged. Be like,
that's true. Like, that's the thing. Now, if you see the animal move to that location, and then it goes camouflage, then it'll make sense. Just, I'll hit that area. Or you can even target it at that point, right?
Yeah.
If you can really see it well enough. So Brad throws out, camouflage cannot be targeted since AoE hits camouflage. So I started down that approach of cannot be targeted. But I'm like, let's make it a little bit more specific. Cannot be targeted while it does not have an ability on the stack. So if it's in the process of attacking, then you can see it. It's there, right? And then it falls into more of the camouflage stuff that we see in first-person shooters, or even in Predator, where if you weren't moving and you're just still, it couldn't see you. So that idea of like, as long as you're just still, then you can't be targeted. But the moment you start moving, then you can.
Yeah, no, I like that. Makes sense. Fits with the flavor. The only part I hate is just I hate's the wrong word, but I dislike just it's another anti-targeting type ability.
Yes.
It's like that's the problem
that
we face. We talk about how we're like, oh, aerial's an issue.
Yes. Yeah.
Spectral, not really used, but it's there one.
To be honest, so Spectral was supposed to be a more used mechanic throughout the game because it was supposed to go onto all the ghosts. But one, we didn't make a lot more ghosts, and two, oh my goodness, people would be so upset if we did. Oh, that would have been so bad. But yeah. All right, so we got enough time if you want to do one more, and then we'll do pack openings.
Sure. We're getting to the bottom here. I didn't do too much design, but let's go with helping discard effects. So there's a natural issue with discard effects in the game where at the start of your game, your opponent starts with realistically their most resources. So if they dump their powerful creatures, they dump their powerful spells, anything like that, once you get to them and start discarding, it's huge diminishing returns. Then if they have no cards in hand, it's doing nothing. Like I played many games with Kendra where I'm Neuraming and it costs so much aura just to do that 2 damage, that 1 more damage than the basic attack. So the effect that I sort of had, I wrote down, and I'll tell you what the issue with it, and then I'll tell you which was better, is whenever a player discards a card, they lose 1 life. If they can't, they lose 2 life. It's that sort of simple fact. The problem with whenever a player discards a card, they lose 1 life. Unhinged still exists, so that can never be on there.
Unhinged doesn't discard your cards.
Doesn't it?
It shuffles it back into your timeline.
All right.
So this is actually a long-going issue. I played Hand Destruction in Magic. I remember always getting to a point, like 7th edition Hand Destruction was, you destroy your opponent's hand, and then you're just like, all right, now I'm just hitting you with 2 2s. So let's just like chip you down. That's always the thing because Hand Destruction is always comboed with a little bit of damage, and if it's not, then it's like, okay, it's fine, but then you're 1-for-1-ing, right? Like, let's look at Diabolic Roar. Diabolic Roar is a really, really good card for people who don't play. Like, no one really plays it, but on paper, not by the actual paper it's printed on, but I mean, like, analytically, it's a really good card. It's a 3-chi. It's far awareness. Like, you still can play it while playing Bolt Shots from distance or Tsunami from a distance. And unless they're discarding another 3-chi, if they discard a 3-chi, you're 1 for 1. If they discard anything else besides a 3-chi, you now took the advantage in that discard. But yet, people still don't play. And then we look at Kendra's Neuron, right? You hit them for 2, great. They discard 2 cards at random, that's great. Early game, that feels really nice. Late game, like you're saying, there's the diminishing return. But then there's also the fact that this is now one of your best win conditions because your basic attack is just hitting for 1. So now you want to hit your opponent for 2. You're neuroing them. You're paying so much for it. And if they aren't discarding cards, you're like, yay, at least I hit you for 2. Like, there's so much challenges with it. And we can't make Neuron hit for more. That's the other side of it. You can't get Neuron to hit for more because then it becomes so powerful. So what about when an enemy discards a card, bring a Skeleton Warrior or whatever, place it around you. So that's cool. But then this brings us back into the issue that we're having a lot in the game, which is it really, the best solution for a lot of these things is just create more summons. Right? It's a lot of, okay, turn you into Summoner, turn you into another resource. So what happens if it doesn't allow for the game to be comfortable with a caster fighter deck? And that's, I think, the rarest combination. Either you're playing summoners as your primary or summons as your secondary. But no one, it's very rare to see someone play completely summonless and be a caster as a primary and a fighter as a secondary, or vice versa. So I would, I like the idea of, okay, if they discard, they lose 1 life. If they can't discard, they lose 2. That's nice. I would penalize them for replenishing the hands too quickly. So this was actually the thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about penalizing for card draw. What about having things that said target player discards a card for each card they've drawn this round, -1 or something like that. So then they're now dumping a bunch of cards. But regardless, like, I would want to see how do you penalize them outside of just hurting them more, because when all of our things just hurt for more, like the pillars, then all we're doing is increasing the tempo of the game, and the tempo of the game is already too high.
Well, that's the thing about the discard. It slows down the tempo, but then it's almost always just a top deck war between the two of you.
Yeah.
And you don't. But your deck is designed to still continue to discard. So even in the top deck wars, you're top decking discard effects that where your opponent's empty-handed, they're still doing nothing. That's the issue with discard.
What about discard cards? So the same thing. So target champion discards a card, and then okay, this brings me into something you pitched before, which is Thoughtless, which is if they have no cards in the hand, this card can go off and do something different. Yeah. So a card that says, they discard 2 cards, and then you have a second ability on there that says if they have no cards in their hand, this deals 4 damage to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Or if they have no cards in their hand, they pay an energy cost, right?
Yeah.
And so, or what about the other way around? Target champion has to pay 6 energy, or so something like they can pay 6 energy. You know how right now we have abilities like Brook Naga, which stuns them unless they pay 3 energy? Something that's like, they have to pay energy, but they can prevent that ability by discarding cards in their hand. So I would want to see like other means of punishing them. A card that they discard the cards, and after they discard the cards, if they have no cards in hand, they gain Paralyze.
I think the route is how you want to punish them. It's just more something. It's more like the concept was an effect to help discard.
Yeah.
Because discard as a battle plan currently does not work. Doesn't seem to work conceptually, except for maybe my no TK. I don't think nobody's seen my no TK except for you, Sid.
Yeah. that was an interesting match. So I would actually, the thing that I am a little bit interested in is having a card that forces your opponent to discard cards, then triggers and says, if your opponent did not discard cards, then do something.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think a series of those would be an interesting way of approaching that, because that could definitely uplift it. Or if your opponent did not discard cards, then you draw cards.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's a very good balance.
Yeah.
Help support.
Because then your opponent does not want you to trigger into those things, so then they need cards for you to make them discard. All right. Pack opening?
Go for it.
All right. I'm going to switch over to the other camera now. All right. I'm
gonna call your rares. In one of these packs, there's a giant scorpion.
All right. I'm going to... All right. Throw that up there. Yeah. It's been... So, for reasons... Not just my own excitement, but for reasons, I've been opening up a lot of second edition packs. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I've definitely got into a little flavor of how to open them, which is really cool. Yeah, just the rares I've been seeing, it's so cool. So, should I start with the Angel or the Yamaraja? I think last time... Huh?
Go for your choice. This is like you want to start with the Yamaraja this time? Switch it up?
Yeah, I think last time we started with the Angel, right?
Yeah, we talked about Yamaraja today, so...
Yeah. All right. So, the actual cracking part is always interesting. So, when you open it up, you got the artwork. The cards are going to be face down from there. When you're flipping through them, you'll be able to find the token card. These two are your rares. The rest of these go to the front for your commons. So, if you want to keep those as a bit of a surprise. All right. I got to hold it kind of this way, right?
Yeah.
All right. Do we need to go quickly for the comments? I don't think people... we don't need to kind of narrate those as much. All right. I'm pulling comments. Let me know if I'm off. Like, it's a little bit blurry, isn't it?
It's okay. You're good.
People can kind of get what we're having. So, I found also the uncommons have been really awesome. So, Breath of Jalara, starting off right there. Odin.
Yeah. That's a good follow-up.
That's a good follow-up. Battle Cry.
Yeah.
Fork Lightning.
I
think that's the weakest out of all those uncommons.
That's the weakest of them all. And that's saying something. That's not a weak card.
No, not at all. All right. And then we have that Erica that we saw earlier, which looks awesome. I love getting the full art. Like, they just look so pretty. All right, rare.
Purifying Wave. And a Rage Gorilla. Solid. You got an Edge in the deck right there.
Yeah, that's right. You got Erica. You got Purifying Wave. You got the Enrage. We saw the Breath of Jalara earlier. What else in here is really solid? I think those are probably your best components, but it's definitely a good start for a Naja deck.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's open up the Angel pack. Anyone else on stream want to guess what we're gonna open?
We got 10 viewers.
Yeah.
Decent amount. Yeah.
All right. So we got those. Taking the 4 from the back.
Oh. An aura pack.
Okay. So this is interesting. There's 3 commons at the back of the pack.
That's interesting.
That means something very, very, very special.
Steve is calling Bolt Shot. Naughty112 is hoping for a foil. I feel like those are good odds with the interesting only 3 commons.
So some commons. Galda's Yep. Uncommon, got the Spear.
Nice.
Decoy
Rabbit. Whip Smash. Angel's Brace. Foil Wall of Vadhis.
So
Shiny.
if you see the 3 commons on the back of your pack, that's what that means right there. I like the foils. They just, all of them have been so pretty. All right, so you got the token. It'll clearly say, it actually says token in the card name, and it has a little reminder text. I know it's a little blurry. You'll see them better when you get them in person. All right, Nizu.
Nizu. Still work for that Ashman deck. And a Baroque.
There's that Ashman deck. And this is what I mean. The packs have been really nice in the regards that, like, I mean, just 2 packs, and look what you got out of that. That's craziness. Let me switch my camera back over. But yeah, I'm really loving just opening up these packs. The fact that in a full box you're getting 48 rares plus 4 epics, plus if you are lucky to get any foil rares. But at the very least, you're looking at 52 rares in a box. You're getting doubles, even triples of some rares. It's phenomenal. I think the box I opened, I ended up with 3 Chrono Walkers in it, an epic and 2 regulars. And like, that's just very, very pretty. So yeah, there's just a lot of really cool stuff for second edition. I'm really, really looking forward to announcing that, moving that forward, getting that into players' hands. And I think it'll be happening soon.
Yeah.
All right, that's the stream for today. Any ending thoughts there, Alex?
No, just thank you all for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll be doing more, I guess, next week.
We'll do something.
Seriously, people, you have to give us opinions on what we should be doing. We're not out of ideas. The truth is, Alex and I could talk. Well, when we went to Quebec a few weeks ago, we were there for like 48 hours. We talked about Genesis for that entire time. We could talk for hours about this game. But, like, we need topics. We need direction. All right, cool. That's it for this week. I guess we'll talk to everyone next week. Friday, actually, so I do want to announce that on Friday I have a guest coming in for my my live stream, and we'll be talking about the value of community building from a store owner's perspective and the back and forth from that. So I want to give that shout out, and I think it's going to be a really, really good talk. So, yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.